And I think eventually the Detroit Pistons are going to have to make a move. And this is Kool-Aid's question, so I'll let you, get first dibs on it. Do the Detroit Pistons need to go star hunting?
Star hunting, that's one that I don't know if I would necessarily say star hunting, but I do believe acquiring another star, acquiring one of those, I don't even want to say alpha because I believe they have a couple different alpha guys, but being that star player is just a little bit different. And I do think when you look at the teams around the league that are primed to have playoff success, they have a couple guys. They have a couple of those dogs. Not good guys, not promising, but they have a couple actualized all-star level players right now. And I do believe, and this is something we've talked about for a couple of years, we thought some of these players can develop into that eventually. But in terms of right now, getting the most out of Cade, who has just signed that, his rookie extension, the max deal, it would be good for them to go out and to acquire another star. But it's not easy. It's not easy. It's more than just taking two to tango. You can absolutely like somebody, but does a situation work for you? The past couple of years, I know Rod and I, we talked about Zach Lavine, and then we get close to the deadline, and then whether people want him or not, it's been known that the Pistons have gone out there and they've looked for players like this, no matter if they're a great financial value or not. To me, it's interesting. And I think it is good to see that the Pistons themselves have shown that they do want to get that type of help on this roster. And it's not just Cade. I think that, one of the things I talked about at the beginning of the season was when you get the shooters here, look how this is going to unlock things for Jaden Ivey. And that was something I believe that a lot of people were just, not that they were dissing it, but more dismissing it as if it wasn't a thing. But it's like, for what we're asking Jaden Ivey to do, to have the ball in his hands when Cade's out on the court, you're going to need shooters for him too, because he's a downhill in the paint guy who's going to attract gravity, who's going to attract attention. So I do believe that getting another star type player like here, it unlocks certain players like a Jaden Ivey, and it helps to further bolster a guy like Cade Cunningham. I don't necessarily know who that star is. If it was last year, I would have been all on board completely with Zach Lavine, Brandon Ingram, or a player like that. But you move, and that's because last year it was in a dump. You talk about Cade, like, we're not 28 losses bad, and then like a month later, like, we're just bad. Like, it was bad. And then so it was like, just throw anything in there that we think can give us some positive dividends. So I do believe they need to acquire another star. I'm still looking at who exactly that star would be, but I do believe it would pay huge dividends for the Pistons.
Yeah, I definitely think over the next year or so, the Pistons are going to have to start making some real decisions about what their roster is going to look like moving forward, like who's going to be there around Cade Cunningham, who are going to be, like those pillar players that, that you're going to be building this thing around. And I think we're going to have to see, a decision be made. And, to Kool-Aid's point, it's pretty difficult in the current landscape to see who. That's why, in my opinion, I think this is something the Pistons look to do in the offseason. I think, with like a lot of the pieces that they have right now, and where they're at, like collectively as a group outside of some minor changes, I just don't know. I actually did a pod with Jake Fisher a couple weeks ago, who's writing with the Stein line. And one of the things he's someone that's pretty plugged in. He's like, he would be pretty surprised because it's like, if the Pistons were to go get another player, what does that necessarily do for them? Like, make them more of a play-in team, or, put them more in like that solid spot in the bottom of the East. So in my opinion, I don't know if there's a move that happens this season that drastically changes, your trajectory, and that necessarily, would make a whole lot of sense. I think with the offseason, not only do you have a lot more clarity of like where other teams are at, because, like we're not just going to have the Pelicans and these teams at the bottom. Like, we're going to see, like the thing of a long NBA season is a lot of different things can happen. And I just think that it has to be, like when you talk about making that move, like, you don't really get the opportunity to go get a all-star caliber player very often. So in my opinion, when you do, you have to do it right. And you have to, look at some certain things. The biggest thing to me is that it has to be someone that shows some form of track record of availability, because the thing that's hamstringed teams like the Pistons and small market teams throughout the league as a whole is when you trade for the star player that just isn't available, that for whatever reason just can't make it out there every single night. We saw it with Blake Griffin. We've seen it with plenty of other stars, and Brandon Ingram just went out indefinitely with a left ankle injury. He's only played 60 games, half of his career, and he's only gotten over 70 once, which was his rookie season. To me, it's like someone like that where you don't even know if they're going to play 20 games out of the season is just, to me, not fully tenable and something that I think is necessarily, like worth the risk. Like I saw someone post about like Kristaps Porzingis with Boston. Well, the difference about, how good they are with Kristaps Porzingis is they're just as good without him because they have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and this well of talent. Whereas whichever player that you would be bringing in, it would be akin to like a Pascal Siakam situation in Indiana, where, he's someone that, you are putting a heavy load on and you are expecting to help take like another step. Like he's someone that you can't necessarily afford to sit out consistently. So to me, I think the answer is yes, just not now.
Yeah, I think absolutely they need another star at some point. Like I think from what I've seen this season, I mean, before this season, you're building around Cade. He's cornerstone. I think you have normally like two cornerstone guys. I think he's definitely one. I think Jaden Ivey's showing he could maybe be that third guy. I think if the season was to end today, you would extend him. But I think, and Eric, you raised it before, and this is the biggest thing I think this team is missing: front court scoring. Easily. Like there's some holes, but like someone with some size, and Tobias is kind of filling this role, but he's 31, 32. Like he's here short term, and I love that he's here, but that's not the long-term solution. They need someone at the 4 or 5 that can give you 18 to 22 efficiently. It doesn't matter how it comes. Preferably they can shoot, but I think we are seeing that Cade has the goods. Ivy, we've got to see some more consistently, but he hit that game winner. He's come through in games when he's needed to. And I love Asar and Ron, but I'm not sure if they're ever going to be a top 3 scorer on an actual, Eastern Conference team. Very valuable players for sure. But yeah, they need to go get another star. Now, the question is mainly, is it at this deadline or at the off season, or is it next year? I think those two guys down on the graphic there, Lavine and Ingram, I wouldn't be mad if they made a deal that makes sense. I really wouldn't. I know the health is a bit scary, but I'm also just not sure. We don't know who's going to become available, but the thing for me is how much do you believe in Cade? And I'll be honest, man, last season, Cade is extremely talented, but when they went on that 28-game losing streak, a little part of me, I didn't want to acknowledge it, was man, I know he had 2 40-point games, but I was surely Cade can get him a win. And there was a lot of circumstances, but I think what we're seeing this season is when you give him some shooting and just basic kind of complementary players, he's a real guy. He's an all-star.
He's in the conversation for the best point guard in the Eastern Conference right now.
Exactly.
Legitimately.
And when you give him another front court scorer or someone else who can give you 20 to 25 a game, his game's going to elevate even more. The ball might be out of his hands a little bit more, but his efficiency is going to go up. And I think what I've loved from Cade, not to sidetrack this too much, but he's buying on defense this season. That is huge. He's been this team's biggest defensive playmaker. And that was crucial without Asar. So you get another guy who can take the load off him offensively. You get the best version of Cade defensively, which 6'6", 7 foot wingspan, great lateral quickness. That's a incredibly valuable player on that end. So, yes, Lavine and Ingram I'll be honest, it would scare me to trade for them, but I see the logic because their value's kind of low right now. And I think, though, they are two players that could really elevate Cade. And like you mentioned, Kool-Aid, those two guys there, more so Lavine could help elevate Jaden Ivey with more spacing. Zach Lavine is a shot creator and shooter he's one of the best in the league. So long way of saying, yes, they do. And if it happens at the deadline, I'll be fine with it. But I think, like you said, Sean, I think it's probably more of an off-season thing.
And I've appreciated hearing you guys' perspective on it, too, because I know a lot of times we just put our head down, we do our work, and we look up because today it's way different than 10 years ago when we would or even 5 years ago, get on here and talk the game. Now we have to make sure we're talking the game. We got graphics for it. We got quotes for this and that. And you pick your head up, and I don't even understand or know necessarily what the full feeling is from across the landscape of Pistons world. So it's to hear this, it's pretty encouraging because I don't think that they're that far off. If you get the right guy, I'm not even saying that this other star player has to be better than Cade Cunningham. I'm not even saying that player necessarily has to be better than where we think Jaden Ivey can be, because I do believe Jaden Ivey can develop into a solid minimum number 3 type of guy. But just knowing that you get something else in here, a little bit more to kind of take this to another gear, and it helps them. I agree with you all. It's going to be more difficult, in my opinion, to make that work right now. I think that when you get to the offseason, especially around and before draft time, when you have a little bit more flexibility, teams' money opens up a little bit more before certain contracts set in. That's why I do believe something like that would take place, if anything. Or by next trade deadline, when you have Cade Cunningham's new contract kicked in, Tobias Harris, 1 more year left on his deal, and you're facing a summer where Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren are going to be extension eligible. And so I do hope that, their mindset, whatever they're looking at, it's on whatever that plan is to make sure you can capitalize on kind of this upward trend with them. I believe it is important for them, if you're going to bring somebody in, to definitely make sure they get in here and they're able to mesh with those other, guys that are going to be here long term.